Welcome to Ask Stago, expert answers to your expert questions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask Stago. I am Cécile, Hourquet, Product Manager, and I'm really pleased to co-host a new episode of this podcast with Audrey Carlo, our scientific manager. Hello, Audrey.
Hello, Cécile.
Today is a really special episode, Audrey. Can you tell us why?
Well, as you know, Cécile, our podcast is usually dedicated to answer any scientific or technical question about hemostasis or the daily organization in the lab. But if I'm doing this job, actually, it is because I know that diagnostics is of primary importance to be sure that physicians can provide accurate care to patients. And today, we are on October 13, and this is a very special day because it is World Thrombosis Day.
Did you know that thrombosis is a condition that contributes to the death of 1 in 4 people around the world every year? We have decided to create a special episode and participate in the World Thrombosis Day WTD campaign that is dedicated to bring awareness around clotting.
To participate to this amazing initiative, we wanted to share with our listeners the story of 3 patients affected with coagulation issues, a way to help everyone to be more aware about the risks, their symptoms, but also to shed light on the lab importance and how the lab staff agents can play a key role in everyday diagnosis and treatment for patients.
We are proud and glad to collaborate with the World Thrombosis Day organization and to welcome the honorable mention recipient of the World Thrombosis Day 2020 Ambassador of the Year Awards, Debra Bryant. So hello, Debra.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having kindly accepted our invitation today. Debra, you are living in South Carolina in USA, and you are the survivor of 2 deep vein thrombosis. You have been diagnosed with elevated factor VIII and the May-Thurner syndrome. So, were you already aware about the thrombosis symptoms before getting these DVTs?
I had no idea.
Okay, we know that it can be sometimes a little bit tough to go to the memory lane for such a big life events, but can you describe us and telling us about what happened? How did you realize that something was wrong?
Yes, I started having a lot of discomfort when I was sitting and even when I was laying in bed. I just could not get comfortable. Then I ended up finding out I was pregnant. So I was like, okay, that explains it.
Okay.
Then the symptoms started getting worse. And this one morning, I woke up to go to work. When I went to get out of bed, I crumpled to the floor as soon as I tried to stand up. My left leg was just so heavy and had like no strength to it. I don't even remember how I made it to my vehicle, but somehow I ended up at work. From there, the symptoms just got worse. My coworker was asking me what was going on, and I was telling her how uncomfortable I was, how much pain I was having in my leg. And I stood up to point at the areas that were hurting, and she noticed right away, even through my pants, that my leg was swollen about twice the size of my right leg. As soon as I realized that, it scared me to death because I was only 11 weeks pregnant. I immediately left work. I called my mom while I was on the way to my OBGYN's office and let her know what I was experiencing because she used to be a nurse. She immediately thought blood clot. She reminded me, don't massage the leg. I get to my doctor's office. Charge nurse comes in to evaluate me. I didn't even get a chance to sit down. As soon as she saw my leg, she said, I'm calling the ER. Go across the street to the hospital. I think you have a blood clot. They took me straight back, and within 5 minutes of getting in the back, they took me for an ultrasound. My leg was also ice cold to the touch, not hot like you hear a lot with the symptoms of blood clot, and it was purplish blue. When the vascular surgeon walked in, he noticed that the coloring, because of me having my legs elevated for a little while, the coloring was improving. When he saw that, he leaned down and kissed my leg and said, thank God we don't have to cut it off.
So yeah, what you say it's important is like to feel that you're starting to have the leg, which is double up. It's true that we say most of all that it's more warms up than cold. Did you have the habits before, just when you're in a plane or if you stay sit for a long time, the heavy leg?
The only symptoms I had prior to that morning was just the discomfort. Up until that day, I don't remember my leg being swollen. It was like an overnight change.
And so when the vascular surgeon came, you already had your ultrasound. He immediately gave you the diagnosis of the deep vein thrombosis event. What was the treatment he gave you? Did you stay in the hospital after?
They had me in the hospital for 2 days. They had immediately started me on Lovenot while I was in the hospital, and that's what they sent me home with. The area I'm in, it's a small town, and they were totally in over their heads with me because of being pregnant.
Did they get into contact with larger hospital specialists?
I actually ended up having to advocate for myself and push for that to happen, to be able to see a vascular surgeon and to see a hematologist. My hematologist and interventional radiologist said I had the perfect storm because I worked a desk job, I was pregnant, I had elevated factor VIII, and I had Turner syndrome.
And is the baby doing okay now?
He is perfect. He is 7 years old. He's the light of my life.
What is the thing that as a patient you regret that you didn't have?
I wish I had have known about the interventional radiologist earlier on. He even said the same thing. My interventional radiologist said that if I had have been referred to him the day I was diagnosed, it would have improved my chances of not having the severe post-thrombotic syndrome that I have today.
And so can you tell us a bit more about this post-thrombotic syndrome you are experiencing? What are your disabilities?
The biggest issue is the leg swelling and the pain. There's not a day and there's barely a moment in a day that goes by that I'm not in pain.
And as you can't drive, have you been able to return back to any work?
I have not. This has been a huge change for not just
you.
me, but
Yes.
all of my family too. Mainly right now, my passion and my work has been my advocacy work, being able to raise awareness and to help other people, especially women in situations similar to mine. My goal is to try to make sure that what I went through doesn't happen to somebody else.
What is the most common question that you have about from the people that come to your group, from new people? What are they looking for helps the majority of the time online?
They want to know why. Some of these members are like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're like, why did it take until now to happen? There's been an increase in people in the group that have ended up being diagnosed with the elevated factor VIII clotting disorder. Another big concern is the testing. A lot of the people are wanting to have access to this testing earlier on in life, like before with women, before we agree to go on like a birth control. Why can't we get tested for clotting disorders to make sure we don't have something? You know, that way we know what our risk factors are and can play a big part in our decision whether or not to go this route.
And do you have any medication to improve your blood flow?
I am on warfarin for life, and I'm also on Plavix for life. So far, it's been successful, thank goodness.
I suppose that you still have to go to the lab frequently.
Yes, my INR range is a little higher than what a lot of blood clot survivors that are on warfarin are used to. Normally, they're used to the 2.0 to 3.0 INR range. Mine is actually a 2.5 to 3.5. And my hematologist actually even said that she wouldn't flinch if I even went as high as a 4 because of my propensity to develop clots.
Do you have a last word you want to share with anyone that will be listening to the podcast today, either with the laboratory staff audience or with everyone that is listening and trying to better understand what can be the clot symptoms?
The biggest things that I try to let everybody know is to make sure you talk to your doctors. And this is for anybody. Even if you think that there's not a chance that this could ever happen to you, talk to your doctor anyway and ask them to go over your risk factors for developing a blood clot. we are our best advocates.
Thank you again, Debra, for being with us and for your time.
Thanks for your testimonial.
It was a pleasure to talk to you ladies today.
It's now time to close this episode. Thank you all for listening. We can only encourage you to listen to our episodes part 2 and 3 for World Thrombosis Day episodes, dealing with pulmonary embolism and stroke respectively.
If you want to learn more about thrombosis in general and the symptoms, please go to find some help on the World Thrombosis Day website, www.worldthrombosisday.org, or find any group of support on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if you want to join the campaign, you can use hashtag World Thrombosis Day. As usual, if you may have any question about hemostasis and the Hemostasis Bench organization, please send your question for the next episode at ask@stago.com, and we will be glad to answer to it. See you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Stago. Diagnostics is in our blood.